Hello everybody, thank you for welcoming me here, especially to you, Sean. Thank you for inviting me, and it's my honour to be here today, to be invited to talk to you about Manuka honey. As Don mentioned, I've got a lot of experience in the pharmaceutical biotechnology industry, and in fact, prior to being involved with Manuka honey, I ran one of the world's largest infectious diseases companies. In fact, this is the first company to have produced a medication to treat, not a vaccine, to treat COVID. So I tell you this for the very simple reason that with a background in infectious diseases, I took a great deal of interest in Manuka honey and following the science behind Manuka honey, and it's very, very compelling. We are delighted that 5 years ago I was part of a small group that decided to form the Australian Manuka Honey Association, and we did so because it was important to provide authenticity to these products, even though there's a great deal of information and published data that highlights and proves the effect, the antibacterial effect of Manuka. It was important to be able to differentiate between authentic Manuka and a lot of Manuka that just is on the market saying that it's authentic. So we've formed a mark. We're delighted with the relationship that we formed with Atomy about 3 years ago, and it's been our pleasure to be working with Atomy to produce these authentic products, especially in the markets that Atomy works in. So if I may, just very quickly, walk you through some of the background with the AMHA. In 2017, we formed an organisation, industry body that oversaw the industry here in Australia, because there was a myth that Manuka honey came from New Zealand. Well, in fact, the Manuka honey that you see from New Zealand originated from Australia. The first plants that were taken to New Zealand were taken in 1888 from Tasmania and grown in New Zealand. What the New Zealanders did that was very clever, and I tip my hat to them, was they were the first to discover the effect of Manuka honey and to market it around the world, and hence why that myth manifested over many years that Manuka was exclusive to New Zealand. But in fact, the irony of this is that it commenced from Australia. So if I may just turn and look a little bit, because it's easier for me to read these. We formed this because it was important to provide a mark of authenticity. It was important to foster the growth of our local market and be able to promote that in a unified way around the world and support the scientific research to establish even more beneficial areas that Manuka honey can provide. It is the national body for the production and promotion of Australian Manuka honey, representing Australian Manuka producers, packers and suppliers. So let's have a look very quickly at the chemistry behind Manuka honey. In Australia, we have more than 80 species of leptospermum. New Zealand has one. So leptospermum is the plant that the bees take the nectar from to then produce the honey and the effect that you see with Manuka. We have over 80 species in Australia, but only one species was taken to New Zealand, and that's the basis of their activity. In Australia, of these 83 or 84 species, 14 of them are active. Active meaning do have beneficial medical effects. MgO, methyl glyoxal, is the active ingredient that you find inside Manuka honey. The Australian Manuka honey, sorry if I may say, the Australian Manuka honey passes the chemical markers required by the New Zealand tests, but most New Zealand honeys don't pass the the authenticity tests required for Australian honey. So that's another interesting perspective. Also, the current regime in New Zealand is not able to provide market and proper authenticity. So, what makes Manuka honey different to all other honeys? It is the active ingredient MGO. Why do consumers buy Manuka instead of other honeys? It's the antibacterial effect. There are other benefits as well, but the proven effect is antibacterial. Manuka honey is also an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, well documented, but not scientifically proven. And we'd prefer to be absolutely honest and transparent with what we discuss. Which plant produces the DHA that converts to MGO? So DHA is called dihydroxyacetone. That's the nectar inside the leptospermum plant. When the bee takes this nectar, in its own stomach, converts that to MGO. And that's what's produced in the beehives. And the last question here is, which plant type produces MGO? Well, it's all leptospermum, as I mentioned before, but there are 14 active types. So let's have a look at MGO. I'll be very quick with this slide. The other benefit Australian Manuka has over the abilities of the New Zealand Manuka is the size of our country. Australia is much, much larger than New Zealand, very obvious, but that means we have many, many, many more hectares of plantations of leptospermum. So the volumes that we can produce in Australia are significantly more. The other very telling and important point is that with Manuka honey, the warmer the temperature, the stronger the Manuka. So New Zealand has very colder climates similar to those of Tasmania, where their leptospermum came from, but Australia has much warmer climates. Queensland, Western Australia, parts of northern New South Wales are able to produce very strong Manuka, very strong MGO Manuka, which means that the medical benefits associated with Manuka and the volumes that we can provide in Australia give us a very strong advantage in the marketplace. And we've seen this with Atomy, because some of the volumes that Atomy has purchased from Manuka Life, the company that I'm a non-executive director of, we supply Atomy, and Atomy has purchased quite strong Manuka from us in very large volumes. So the confidence that you can have in knowing that the supply will always be there for you is important. If I move through just some of the values of Manuka and why is it that there is such an important emphasis on Manuka honey. Well, you can see from this slide, if I may, sorry, that seems to have moved on the back but not up here. There we go, thank you. So as you can see, the market size of Manuka back in 2015 was something like, globally, $500 million, and it's projected to be by 2027 $1.2 billion in size globally. So there's a lot of work being done, and it's really just out of Australia and New Zealand. By the way, many countries around the world have tried to grow Manuka, the leptospermum plant. It doesn't produce any active MGO. It's just something, I must say, God has bestowed upon Australia and New Zealand. It's very true. In South Africa, they've tried to grow it. Very similar climates and geography, and it wouldn't work. So, if I may, also have a look at some of the pricing indexes. If you look at 2007 as being the 100% timeline, by 2015, and this should be updated by now, it had more than doubled in value. And if you look at some of the market sizes, what's very interesting is that one of the world's largest, the world's largest market is in Asia. And why is this? Because Asians generally have been much more educated and are much more sophisticated in their knowledge of Manuka. North America is lagging behind quite a lot. It's quite popular in many parts of the larger countries across Europe, but in Asia, this is where the key markets exist. So again, you're in the sweet spot with Atomy. And just as a summary, these are some of the benefits that you can expect to see with Manuka. As I mentioned before, the antibacterial effect is proven, but these are other benefits that are well documented, just not clinically proven. And that's only because the studies with patients haven't been done in a large cohort manner. So we have anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial is antibacterial, antioxidants. It treats skin conditions such as eczema and acne, and has been shown to be it's very well documented, the effects there. Wound healing, it's amazing in wound healing. So a lot of elderly people especially that may have diabetic ulcerated foot, the Manuka to treat that works extremely well. Now what it doesn't do is treat the diabetes, but it does stop the weeping of the wound. So many hospitals in the aged care facilities will use this with elderly people that have diabetic foot to just stop the bleeding and stop the weeping, and also stop the ulcer from growing. Oral health, plaque, other gum inflammations, tooth decay. It's excellent for sore throats because this area here is one of the worst places that you can get bacterial infection, and the Manuka honey works extremely well. In digestion, it works very well as well. It actually is proven to treat a bacteria that causes gastro problems referred to as Helicobacter pylori. This is quite a deleterious bacterial infection of the gut, and Manuka honey is proven to treat this, and that's how it helps prevent gastric ulcers. The thing to know about Manuka honey, there are many antibiotics in this world that we use. Antibiotics are known as bacteriostatic. So the word static means stop. So they stop bacteria. But Manuka honey is bactericidal. Bactericidal means it kills the bacteria. And that's very important to know. So it's a very effective treatment. So what we do with the mark of authenticity at the AMHA, we set some very strict guidelines. The MGO must read as being minimum 85. Anything below that is not active. The DHA that we also measure in the scientific analyses must not be any lower than 170. And the reason for that is if you've got low DHA, it means that the Manuka is aged, because it's a living thing. It's aged and is on the decline, which means even if you have some Manuka that matches being above 85 in MGO but below 170 in DHA, it may not be active for very long, and that's important to be aware of. And yeah, that's really the point of that slide. And we're lucky because Atomy is AMHA authorised, and therefore by being authorised, it has the mark of authenticity on all of its documents. And here is the actual certificate that Atomy has, which proves that as a liquid gold member, it is in the top tier member level within the AMHA. So with that, I will stop right there and thank you all for your time, and I'm happy to take questions later if you like. Thank you.